So, Connor, the Gadsden flag has been in the headlines the last couple of days. You've been in the headlines. Before we get into the story, can you tell us a little bit about the history of this symbol and what it stands for?
Well, the Gadsden flag, this was named for Christopher Gadsden. He was a delegate to the Continental Congress. He designed it in 1775, right as things were cooking up in the American Revolution. It was flown on a bunch of ships. The commander-in-chief of the Navy made it his personal flag. They hoisted it on all these different ships. The Marines were using it. The rattlesnake, which features on the flag, was a symbol of unity for the 13 colonies. Benjamin Franklin had used it like 2 decades prior, showing a rattlesnake like cut up into pieces and saying, we got to bring this together so that we can defend ourselves against Great Britain. And the flag, I mean, Gadsden, when he was doing this, it was intended as a warning to Britain not to violate individual liberty, not to violate the rights of American individuals. And so the idea that it's connected to slavery or rooted in racism is just historically illiterate and totally preposterous. It's one thing for a Twitter troll to make some type of claim like that. It's another thing for an academic institution to be conveying total inaccuracies and garbage like that. And yet here we are. It's the sad state of schools today.
Well, and so that brings us to what is going on this week, which is that you have this 12-year-old little kid out in Colorado who has the Gadsden flag on his book bag. He ends up getting pulled out of class for having that patch on his book bag. Take us through the specifics of what happened, because you had video of part of this interaction that you shared and it went viral.
Yeah, so 12-year-old Jaiden, he's in 7th grade in Colorado Springs, and he had a backpack with a whole bunch of different patches, one of them being the Gadsden flag. He's a very patriotic kid. He's a huge fan of our Tuttle Twins books. He's been reading them for years, and he gets kicked out of class because, as was captured on video by the mom secretly, the vice principal claimed that, the flag has origins in slavery and therefore is a disruption to the class environment. So they kick him out. Mom is driving Jaiden home from class after being kicked out, and Jaiden says to his mom, hey, in one of the Tuttle Twins books, the twins, they get the media to help them pressure the corrupt politicians to fight back. Maybe we should get the media involved. So the mom is like, all right. She drives him over to the local TV station, an NBC affiliate. Jaiden literally goes up, and this kid has some moxie. He goes up to the doorbell and rings the doorbell, asking to speak with a reporter. No one comes out, is willing to, come out and talk to him. And so that night, the mom DM'd me on Twitter and was like, hey, my son's a huge fan. He wants to stand up for his rights. Can you help? So she sends me the video, and immediately I'm like, oh, this is a gold mine. Like, I knew it immediately would go viral. The next morning, I posted at 8 a.m. I went into a meeting for an hour. I come out of the meeting. It's got like already 8 million views. Libs of TikTok and everyone is sharing this all over the place. Now I think across social, it's got at least like 40 million views combined. It just has erupted. And Jaiden really, for many, is a hero standing up against all this nonsense that we're seeing in the schools.
Well, and you share this video, it goes viral. The story goes mega viral. Obviously, lots of outlets picking it up and telling the history of this. Even Democratic politicians getting involved to correct the school on this, the purported narrative that was shown in that video from the school. Now, Jaiden ends up sort of winning in the end, right? Because the patch is back on his bag and all is well now, right?
Well, the patch never left his bag. The next day after he was kicked out, he said, I want to go back to school, but keep the patch on. He goes back. By this point, emails are already flooding into the teachers and the principals. And so no one said anything to him, despite him being sent home the day prior. And so he was able to go to school. He was a bit ostracized that day. He ate lunch alone. He played chess by himself, poor kid. And because everyone's like, oh my gosh, like we don't want to be a part of this or whatever. The next day, at this point, like it's in the tens of millions of views. The next day, Jaiden shared in a video that I posted on Twitter. He said that now kids are putting Gadsden flags on their lockers because they think it's cool. And so now he's kind of the cool hip kid now that people are seeing that he's been on like Ben Shapiro and all these things. And So he's kind of having a blast now, writing this wave of interest. But he's so grateful that all these people are standing up with him, because he stood up alone. It was just, him saying that he wanted to do this, and his mom was trying to be like a supportive mom, and okay, like, this is your opportunity to like put in practice what you've been learning in those Tuttle Twins books. And so he stood up, and now many others are standing with them, and I think that's awesome.
It's interesting because you're the mind behind, Tuttle Twins, and you have this series here, you have this brand, and you're trying to accomplish something, and you're doing that, through education and entertainment. And yet an incident like this happens, and you see the real world impact of the Tuttle Twins. What is that like for you as a creator to watch unfold?
It's a bit surreal. When creating these books, I'm just sitting at my computer, and Elijah, who's our illustrator and my partner, he and I are brainstorming, like, how do we convey this idea and how do we illustrate it? And we're just like doing it ourselves, not understanding the impact that this has on other people. And we often get, emails and texts and DMs saying thank you, and it's so helpful for my son. And so we get a lot of praise or whatever. But not until this week has it really crystallized in my mind the real world impact of this stuff. I've always known that, hey, man, in the future, we're going to have millions of kids now reading Tuttle Twins. And in the future, they're going to be entrepreneurs and, the future Ron Pauls and other like freedom fighters who are going to help right the ship. But in my mind, it's always been down the road, that we're investing right now in the rising generation to have an impact in the future. Until this week, it hadn't really crystallized for me that these books can and are having a very tangible impact in people's lives right now. When Ben Shapiro interviewed Jaiden yesterday, he's talking to this kid. He's super bright, and so Ben asks him. He says, like, you're very politically informed. You're aware of history. Like, what has shaped your views? How do you know all this stuff? And he said, my mom and Connor Boyack and the Tuttle Twins books. And I'm like, all right, this is exactly what it's about. Now the goal is, let's make 1 million more Jaidens. We got to help other kids all over the world, certainly here in America, learn these same ideas. Because the schools really, not only are they not teaching these ideas of human flourishing and freedom, they're often teaching quite opposite ideas. And certainly the culture and social media and so forth can be quite averse to these ideas. We need to invest. We need to be intentional as parents to make sure that we're exposing our kids to good material, just like Jaiden's mom did. And so that's what we're kind of on a rampage to now do with Tuttle Twins.
Well, last question for you, because it is interesting. The other element of this is that this mom went in, she recorded this. You were able to get the video. I often say, thank goodness for video cameras and cell phones, because before, there's so many instances in which we wouldn't actually know what happened if we weren't able to see it. But that family still could have gone home and said, you know what? We've lost this battle. We don't want to be at the center of a media flurry. We're afraid to speak up. They instead chose to speak up. What's your advice to parents right now? Because these sorts of things, they seem to be happening more and more, or at least we're becoming more aware of them.
I think we have to anticipate that it will happen. It's a matter of when, not if. And therefore, you need to decide now how you will act in the future. When I was a little kid, my parents would always say, you need to decide now, as a 12-year-old, right, that you're not going to use drugs and so forth, so that you don't have to make the decision in the future when you're tempted or presented with that scenario. You make the decision early, and then that's who you are and what you stick to. I think as parents, we need to make the decision now about, hey, if this happened to me, or if this happened to my kid, how am I going to act? I think COVID taught us a lot of lessons where a lot of us were caught, off guard, and okay, sure, I'll wear masks, and okay, I'll be bullied into closing my business or my church or whatever. I think these are warning signs. They're clarion calls for us to say, all right, we see things are accelerating. We see things are heating up. I'm going to be presented with some type of situation like this in the future, or my child is. We need to think through right now, how will we respond in that occasion? I need to be learning. I need to be fortifying myself, even my spiritual strength. I need to be preparing myself and my children for that day, so that we are prepared when it happens. We don't want to be caught off guard. We don't want to be reactive. We want to be proactive. We want to lead. We want to be an example to stand for truth. But that requires that we invest right now. It requires that we read good literature, that we have engaging discussions with our family, that we foster critical thinking. We've got to do the hard work, the day-to-day work right now, so that we're all prepared when the opportunity arises.
Well, I appreciate you taking us through this story and for bringing us that video of it. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.